In this comparative study, I'll be exploring and looking at how different cultural contexts have been reflected within the zombie subgenre between the film Shaun of the Dead, directed by Edgar Wright, released in 2004, and Planet Terror, directed by Robert Rodriguez, released in 2007, with the film focus being the horror genre and more specifically the zombie subgenre. The topic being, how do zombie films differ from different cultural contexts? This comparison is justified as the films selected come from different geographical cultural contexts, due to Shaun of the Dead being made in England while Planet Terror was made in America. Due to the difference in geography and history within these countries, they each have their own differences in their interpretations of the zombie subgenre, stemming from their different values, such as England's dry and grounded sense of humour compared to America's extreme stylized and rich film history, which influence their perception on the genre, which is the categorization of narrative films by the stories they tell and the ways they tell them. However, this isn't always so, because genres themselves are not static. Because they are composed of several intertexts, they are, of course, mutable. From this, we can infer that genre are an ever-changing style of categorizing films, changing and adapting depending on prior context, which could be historical references, past works within the genre itself, which has redefined it as a whole, developing it to its modern form. The films Shaun of the Dead and Planet Terror both depict this development of the zombie subgenre, where the process and development of these characters in line of the history and prior context of the genre, yet each unique due to their own cultural context being reflected in the film themselves, separating them apart. For example, the geographical and socio-economical context depicted are very different. In Shaun of the Dead, this is evident through Shaun's middle-class English bloke's life, self-criticizing the lifestyle of the working class within England for its mundane and aspirationalist demographic. Through the director's choice of location for production in a town within London, where the majority of the working class spends most of their life, it displays the dull lifestyle of this demographic through the mise-en-scene of the film, where Wright purposely showcases the grey skies in the background, which adds a somber tone to the film. Whereas in Planet Terror, Rodriguez chose to shoot the film in a town within a heavily militarized area within Texas, America. Furthermore, a classic zombie subgenre trope of the military developing weaponry as a narrative device is used to further reflect America's own context at the time, due to America's ongoing war in the Middle East, where during production, America still had troops placed in Afghanistan due to America's own history with terrorism such as the 9/11 terrorist attack. The narrative device explains why El Rey has a confrontation with the zombified American military caused by a leaked chemical weapon for America. The narrative progression of Shaun of the Dead follows Shaun's journey of self-improvement, from working a minimum wage dull job whilst trying to recover his failing relationship with his partner Liz. However, because of the sudden arrival of the zombie apocalypse, he is forced to overcome his own faults. Whereas in Planet Terror, we follow El Rey's intense journey throughout the zombie apocalypse within Texas, where the main antagonist is the corrupt American military. The cohort of characters journey to survive the apocalypse by escaping Texas to a place where they can survive. El Rey's journey throughout the apocalypse is reminiscent of a redemption story for him, reconciling with his prior lover and meeting old friends during the film. These two movies capture the idea of two characters who in the face of an apocalypse are growing as individuals, depending on their own circumstances driven by the different cultural contexts. And to compare these two zombie films, I'll be discussing the hero's journey, gore, and intertextuality. The hero's journey, also known as the monomyth, is a commonly used narrative arc for characters within film and different medias. Joseph Campbell, the author of the book The Hero with a Thousand Faces, released in 1949, discusses his theory on the monomyth and the journey of the archetypal hero. He believed that the monomyth isn't for the classical hero, more so it's a course that all humans go through. It's a fundamental experience that everyone has to undergo. It depicts and breaks down the progression of the human character throughout their whole journey within 12 different steps. This narrative arc is commonly found trope within the zombie genre. The journey Shaun as well as El Rey go through follows this monomyth, depicting their own progression throughout the film. This progression, even though following the same structure found in the monomyth and the zombie subgenre, still differs due to cultural context separating these films, with Shaun's progression focusing more on his development of his personal relationships, as seen with the struggling relationship between himself and his girlfriend Liz, as demonstrated in the opening sequence where each shot in the scene is framed so Shaun and Liz are never on the same side, representing the growing divide between them. Whereas Planet Terror, El Rey has a more extreme progression throughout these steps, where every level clearly depicted, often an extreme method to appeal to the demand that Hollywood has in an institution in America. These 12 steps are: this approach taken towards the monomyth is different for both films due to the cultural context influencing the director's approach on it. For Shaun of the Dead, we see Shaun's journey of self-development with his relationship with Liz, as well as he grows in the face of danger, becoming more mature. This development is shown through the dialogue, where in the opening scene we see Shaun ask what does exacerbate mean, being completely oblivious. Later on in the film, we see him use exacerbate correctly, showing signs of learning and character development, leading to the end of the film where he's responsible and reliable, unlike his prior self. This realistic development grounds the film in reality, even though it is fiction. One of the ways this is achieved is through Wright's choice around the film based in daytime, compared to Planet Terror being based only in night. For El Rey, unlike Shaun, he faces most of his problems with violence and power, shown through his excessive obsession with guns and American value. He also develops his relationship with his lover Cherry, enough to self-sacrifice for her. For example, crossing the threshold signifies that the protagonist has committed to the journey. For Shaun, this is distinguished by his journey towards his mother and Liz's house. Some of the obstacles Shaun faces are traversing safely through suburban England, a direct result of the context in which the film was made. This is shown through a montage where, through mise-en-scene of props of the tea and biscuits, which is zoomed in on in the final shot, showcasing British own culture of afternoon tea. For El Rey, he faces many different obstacles. The most prevalent for him, before he can stop the virus, is amending his own relationship with Cherry, which leads to a more fulfilling ending within his monomyth. However, this is shown differently due to the appearance of a scene showcasing Ray and Cherry making love, which is hyper-sensualized due to the mix of diegetic sounds, such as Cherry moaning and non-diegetic music playing in the background accompanying the scene, as well as the close-up of Cherry's naked body. Whilst both films abide by genre tropes for the zombie subgenre, such as putting life at risk to save the heroine, however Ray's development turning into a highly stylized martyr story is differed from Shaun's development into a more stereotypical hero for an everyday man, reflecting their own status with the respective cultures. My second subtopic is gore. The horror genre is in itself about disturbing and dark subject matter, seeking to elicit a response of fear, terror, disgust, shock, suspense, and of course, horror from the viewers. Through gore, eliciting a response of fear, disgust, and horror are extremely easy. A staple trope of the zombie subgenre which induces fear is the concept of being eaten alive. Showing this without any censorship is an effective technique to scare the viewer. This uncensored gore is allowed and achieved through using CGI or props, demonstrating the extreme violence. The history of gore is along with cinema itself. It is prevalent because we get to consume something we see little of in real life in a controlled and safe environment, where we can test the limits of our emotive response in comfort. In an increasingly sanitized and protected life, the chance to experience fear and emotional pain can be appealing. In the zombie subgenre, gore is an absolute staple, being inescapable with the premise of a man eating creatures. This leads to the zombie subgenre tropes such as being gutted alive. In Shaun of the Dead, this is shown in a scene where David is in the middle of the frame, surrounded by zombies tearing him apart, ripping out his guts. This is achieved through prop selection to best represent what guts or an open stomach would look like. The following shot, where we see his legs get popped out by his friends in a slapstick-like manner, is accompanied by the diegetic sound effect of his legs ripping off. This breaks up the intense moment for the viewer with a comedic one. This is a common theme within Shaun of the Dead, showing a disturbing image followed up by a comedic punchline. Whereas in Planet Terror, gore is shown consistently and extremely. Unlike Shaun of the Dead, Planet Terror instead uses the absurdity and extremeness of what's depicted in the scene for relief. For example, after a shot of a man being gutted, the next shots within the sequence shows Ray doing flips and unrealistic knife tricks to kill a zombie. This excessive violence and over-stylized depiction is partly due to the own context of the Hollywood institution, resulting in Planet Terror using CGI special effects and mass explosions, these being tools being commonly found within films produced for Hollywood. As well as this, these tools are used to represent the violent nature and overall extreme depiction of an American lifestyle due to their own historical context of gun ownership and war, resulting in the handling of violence within the zombie genre leading to be more extreme because of their own disposition to violence. The zombie subgenre requires gore and disturbing shots to impact the audience. However, in Shaun of the Dead and Planet Terror, they differ in the way they handle them. With Shaun of the Dead using comedy, whereas Planet Terror, they use extreme imagery of how Ray would kill a zombie to resolve the feeling of fear from the gore imagery. My third subtopic is intertextuality, which is the referencing of other forms of media within a film to elicit certain memories to enhance the viewing experience. Intertextuality is critical for the development of genre and different movie tropes which build these genres. This is especially true for the zombie subgenre, where the whole premise of a man-eating creature mindlessly roaming around is intertextuality in itself, referencing the Night of the Living Dead. Jonathan Culler, American literary critic, stated that works are not autonomous systems, organic wholes, but intertextual constructs, sequences which have meaning in relation to other texts. These allusions enhance the film by pointing out their own nature to the audience. Cases of intertextuality within Shaun of the Dead directly link it with its own cultural context. For example, it is a common trope with the zombie subgenre for a character using a baseball bat as a weapon. However, since baseball is not popular within England, the cricket bat as a prop weapon is used, since cricket is one of England's national sport instead. Another case of intertextuality is through the dialogue in the scene where they are looking through vinyls to use as weapons. They discuss what vinyls are allowed to be used as weapons whilst referencing many famous bands and songs, such as Dire Straits and English rock band Stone Roses. These references further emphasized by the context in which the film was made due to an English audience who understands these references compared to other audiences. An example of intertextuality in Planet Terror is the mise-en-scene in a shot where we zoom in on the needle in the Doctor's hand. This zoom in on the knife is a graphic match to the American classic horror film Halloween, where the killer Mike Myers is renowned for this frame. This referencing of prior classic American horror gives the audience that goosebump moment which as a non-American viewer might not be achievable for. Altogether, from both Shaun of the Dead and Planet Terror, we can see two distinct different methods of addressing the zombie subgenre due to their own cultural context. This is shown from their own use of the monomyth, in which El Rey leads an over-stylized martyr's journey in extremely American mannerism, while Shaun goes through the everyday issues of the Englishman during the zombie zombie apocalypse. Also through gore, we can see the way two different cultures handle it, with British humour resolving the intense imagery within Shaun of the Dead, whilst America's more exposed audience due to gun violence is more impressionable towards extreme gore. Finally, through intertextuality, we can directly see where these films have taken inspiration from and how they've developed differently due to their own cultural context while still abiding by the zombie subgenre conventions.